Hi guys, it's Lennon. Welcome to Fall Thursday. Today, I guess inspired by the spooky season, I decided to get out some of the negative cards from the Thoth deck and go over a little bit of my thoughts on them and a little on will, because to me, the Thoth deck is based on Crowley's interpretation of willpower and what that means. And to me, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, which was his mission statement, I guess you could say. Will, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, doesn't mean willpower as in the force that drives you. It probably meant, well, like I said, this is my opinion. It probably meant your calling, your purpose, right? So it goes on you and your purpose in life and finding that and then using that as your willpower to drive you. Not so much just the ambiguous term of willpower, but the actual purpose and why you are on this earth type of a thing. That's what will means. And so I thought we would look at, and as the whole deck, as a whole, is his interpretations going through that, I thought that the more negative cards would be confusing if we were looking into this as a form of calling or purpose. So let's take a look at the cards. Now, I've gotten my quintessential Thoth out for this. Now, I got the 10 of Wands, which is oppression. I got the 5 of Cups, which is disappointment. I got 7 of Cups, which is debauch. I got 8 of Cups, which is indolence. I got, let's move these so that we can get them all into frame. If we can, I don't know if we will be able to. Actually, I was gonna try to do this suit by suit, but it doesn't really matter. The 3 of Swords, sorrow. The 9 of Swords, which is cruelty. The 10 of Swords, which is ruin. Da, 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 da. The 5 of Discs, which is worry. And the last card, which is the 7 of Discs, failure. So, there we go. So these are just some examples of the seemingly negative cards in the Thoth deck. And what I thought I would go over is a little of my thoughts on each of these cards. And I don't know, see what I can come up, see what comes up for me in terms of purpose, your calling, and willpower. So, yeah. So we're going to start with the Wands because that's the only one we have in this suit. Zoom in a little. Here we go. Now here we have the 10 of Wands, which is oppression. Now, oppression is a word that you automatically think of, well, for me, I think of the 8 of Swords, that feeling of being actually oppressed. But I don't know if it necessarily means that here. Now, of course, the keywords have an association because of the Lord of Oppression, and that has Golden Dawn astrological associations with it. If you're familiar with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, or not the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Tarot, it has the little Lord of Oppression titles on there. And so I think that it has so many associations that's why the keywords have come about. However, I want to use the keywords because I think they're a good jumping off point for the energy of the card. But we're going to look abstractly at them. So for me, the 10 of Wands is the fire. Crowley says in the Book of Thoth, it is the fire in its most destructive aspect. So if you think of fire and you think of those, some of those movies where the fire is in a circle and you're trapped in the circle, it's fire that's coming at you that you can't get out of. You cannot get saved from this aspect of fire. So this is fire that is coming at you in an actual destructive way. So this is a forest fire, right? This is coming and it's going to sweep the forest and there's nothing you can do. You can try and try and try, but it's that feeling of like almost helplessness that oppresses you. And it could also be a repression, like something tragic that's happened to you, like some sort of trauma. I think of trauma in terms of this as well, that if this was a trauma and the trauma has oppressed you, or you have repressed it in some aspect, then that is a fire that lives in your soul that is still oppressing you because you haven't worked through the trauma yet. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that you have to work through trauma to get over it or anything like that. This is just my thoughts on this card, okay? Now, it does say in the Book of Thoth that this is the greatest antipathy, okay? Now, that just means that there's an opposition here astrologically. And when there is like a aversion, so to speak, an aversion between the astrology or within the astrology, you have to look at it like, because of its decan, because of its astrological associations in this deck specifically, the aversion has to play a role. So we have to say that this could be a deep-seated feeling of hostility, okay? This could be towards trauma. This could be towards someone else. This could be something doing that to us in the form of oppressing us. So I think that is a little on why the word oppression works for the Ten of Wands. But also, if we're looking at it in terms of willpower, or purpose, or your calling, this is a great way to tell you that you cannot escape your fate. Whether your fate is for ill or for good, you can't escape it. It's like escaping your destiny. Even when you try to escape it, you're going to manifest it no matter what. And this is this oppressive nature. So say you're like the chosen archetype, the chosen one archetype, and they do everything that they can, to escape their fate, to escape this grand destiny. They're like, I just want to be normal. I don't want to do this thing. It's still sort of, even in stories, it still manifests for them that they're the chosen one, even if they're trying to weave their own story. So this is to me, in terms of your calling and your purpose, this would be no escape. Simply, you're oppressed by your destiny, for ill or for good. So that was the Ten of Wands. Okay, let's look at another suit. We're going to go with Cups next. Here is the Five of Cups. This is disappointment. In the Five of Cups in the Thoth deck, it means putrefaction. Okay, this is decay. This is stagnation. All fives to me mean stagnation in some sort of way, but this is disappointment. So you're like, okay, are you disappointed? Are you disappointed by your purpose, by your fate? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're disappointed in a way that's not going to move you forward. It just means that, this wasn't really what I saw myself doing. This really wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. And you know how sometimes, especially when you're a child, you have this thing like, I want to do this when I grow up. I used to hate adults asking me, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I did not like that adults were so fixated on that question, especially asking you when you were around that like transitional age of like 10 to 12 to maybe 13. That whole adolescent age, the adults just became obsessed with asking you that. I guess to get a pinprick of what your personality is, but that means nothing. That is your human doing, not your human being. So, but it's like, this is the disappointment. Say like if you ever in your life as a kid or anywhere, you told someone that this is what I want to be when I grow up, and then you see them later on and you didn't end up being that thing. There's this like disappointment there, like you didn't do what you were set out to do, and that's like some sort of failure, which we'll get to in a little while. But in the cups, disappointment is a feeling. It's a feeling of stagnancy, but within water, that would look like pitch. Picture a castle moat, a medieval castle moat. And it's around the castle and it's got water in it, right? But it's not moving. This usually castle moat water is not moving, so it's stagnant water. And people use it, or people did back in the day, as like a outdoor trash can. So they threw carcasses, dead bodies, diseased bodies. They threw like animal parts in there, like the almost well, they may have had a citrine, but if they didn't or a cistern, if they didn't have a cistern, then that's still could, like, the maids would throw the chamber pots stuff in there. So it's like pitch, black pitch. It's dirty, stagnant, poisonous water. And we see that too in the OG Thoth deck. But for this red like liquid, smoky liquid, it's like the mixing of something, but we're disappointed in the mixture. So we're trying to make something in the Five of Cups in terms of our life and in terms of our emotions, but then once it's mixed, it's not good. Like, we're disappointed in it, right? It's like the whole concept to me of flipping a coin. They say that if you flip a coin and it lands on something, you're either excited or disappointed by the outcome. That's the same concept here, is that what we were doing in the Ace through 4 before this was we were trying to map out which side of the coin we wanted, and then this one, we actually got disappointed by the outcome. So it's more so in terms of your purpose and your calling and your will, or Crowley's will, I guess you could say. You don't want there to be a putrefaction involved. You don't want what you want your calling to be to stagnate. But if it's a true calling, you're supposed to be working at that, not allowing it to stagnate. So that's a huge thing for this card. Okay, one of my favorite cards, like looking at it, it's probably like, I guess, looking at all the minor cards in the Thoth. I love looking at debauch. Okay, this is the Seven of Cups. The sevens to me are also this transitional, this like transitional number. So I like looking at it in like this slimy, it's a stagnancy like what we saw in the 5, but it's worse. Like, the poison has actually infected the water, and it's gross. Like, it's gross and slimy, and it's the bog of eternal stench now. But I want to talk to you about something that I just had an epiphany about while trying to make this video. This is the Marie Antoinette card. All right? It's weakness, but its association is Venus in Scorpio, okay? So that is the Empress with the Death card. A dead Empress. That's Marie Antoinette, okay? Why is it Marie Antoinette? Because this card represents external splendor. This is a quote from the Book of Thoth. External splendor and eternal corruption. Okay, she was young, naive. She spent lots of money because she was dissatisfied in her life. She wanted there to be this aspect of normalcy to her life, but there never could be that. And talk about this in terms of will and your power and your calling. She was bona fide, born and raised to be this Empress. Okay, this Empress, we're calling her the Empress. She couldn't escape her calling, her purpose, right? Because she couldn't escape it, no amount, disappointment, or oppression helped her through it, right? That's another thing that I enjoyed about the disappointment card in terms of your calling, in terms of your purpose, is that whether or not you're disappointed by the outcome of something that you've strived for or that you are striving for, no amount of disappointment is going to help. So, and no amount of oppression from your purpose or calling is going to help either. So whether or not you feel like oppressed by your purpose in life, it's what you do with that makes all the difference. And Marie Antoinette took this to like a debauchery place. So she took her purpose, and instead of doing this, that, or the other, right? Or what we would consider what she was supposed to do, she kind of let it muddy, right? So her purpose and calling became muddied. And that's what led to this external splendor. She looked fabulous. She always dressed right. She spent lots of money to have this external splendor, but she was corrupted by this debauchery. She was corrupted by her calling. So this is now my Marie Antoinette card. All right, and then the last cup we have is Indolence. Now, indolence to me, like, I guess forever has meant laziness. But this is just a continuation of this weakness and of this corruption. Now, indolence or laziness in this particular card, to me, means this stagnancy that we've been seeing thus far has become actually poisonous, but it's become barren. Okay, so think of, like, that's why I chose this image of, like, the blackness, because it reminds me of, like, oil spills in the ocean. So the stagnancy and the debauchery and all of that, and, like, the poison that is festering has actually made the water barren now, where nothing can grow. So this is like the corruption has pinnacled here to a place where you don't actually know where to go from here. So that's like the whole purpose of this card. I guess in terms of, like, your calling or your purpose, to me this might mean laziness to an extent that you're purposefully not going to do anything about your calling, and the negative associations that could have on your life. All right, let's do swords. Here's the top daddy here of the cards that are negative, right? The Three of Swords, sorrow, the Lord of Sorrow. Now, I loved the use of black versus this, like, teal green color and the shards of light here, because Crowley calls this the womb, or this card, the womb of chaos. So the womb in which chaos came from, festers, grows, okay? The womb of the jackal, right? So that's what this card is. And it's unappeasable. That's what the sorrow in this case means. We are unable to appease the chaos god, okay? In my opinion, that's what that means. But this is secrecy and perversion, like a little bit of revenge. This is all the things that you map out when you are at your worst. So say you are at the worst place you could possibly be in your life, or it represents that time, okay? It represents a time when you were at your complete worst, but had a bucket of ideas, right? It's the ideas that come out of those worst times. That's what this is. You can't appease the god of perversion, right? And it's that feeling like I had so many ideas, but they came from this bad place. This idea of revenge and vengeance and just ice cold cruelty that comes from a place of sorrow. The cruelty, which we'll see in this card, manifests here. It's within our so sorrowful times, when we're at our very worst. When we're at our worst, the sorrow allows these things to fester, and it pulls things to fruition that we normally wouldn't have done. So that's what this card represents. And it's an intense need, because this is air, right? This is ideas. But this is an intense need to create. But your ideas are coming from this wounded place. You're wounded. The blood that is seeping from this wound is not your idea. You should heal the wound and then come up with something, right? So, but then we have cruelty, right? Which is what I was just saying. Cruelty is as the Nine of Swords is my Hannibal Lecter card. Okay, this is cruelty. Now, throughout the sword suit, we have seen disorder in the air. This airy, this chaotic, airy, like those feelings, right? everything is in chaos, everything is in disorder up until now. So the disorder has been rectified, so Crowley says, but it's to your detriment. All these are lined up very, very well now. It's not in chaos, it's not in disorder, but it doesn't mean that just because this is that it has been reordered doesn't mean that it's beneficial. That's where the cruelty lies. It's passion, very ordered passion without heart. Okay, Hannibal was very passionate about what he did, but it lacked empathy. It lacked heart. Okay, some might disagree with me on that. Maybe he did have heart, but it did lack empathy. And he had all of his ducks in a row like this, but it manifested in cruelty. So this is my Hannibal card. This is my psychopath card. And what can we do when we're met with cruelty like this? And usually, especially working with this deck, I use this in terms of self, or like how this would be my Hannibal Lecter card. Doesn't mean that the cruelty is from someone else. This is from you. This cruelty is coming from inside you. You have this cruelty that's been allowed to fester. How have you manifested that cruelty, and how is it eating you alive? You know, pun intended. Do we resign ourselves to it, or do we make the decision to change it? Change the cruelty that is manifesting from the sorrow, and or heal the wound, right? These are like stitches on the wound, but the wound is not healed. Mm-hmm. So, okay, and the last sword we have is the 10, of course. It's not ruin as in you're like all is lost. That's not what it means to me. Crowley calls this soulless mechanisms. To me, that means like the soulless, inhumane aspects of technology, like AI, right? Like how we take, when we're using and utilizing technology, we're taking humans out of it. And so to me, the ruin here is finding a ruin in like a forest somewhere, but that area has been highly industrialized. And it's like, how beautiful was the forest before it got cut down, before it got urbanized? And it's within these ruinous states, that we realize certain aspects of science, certain aspects of technology have ruined humans' relationship with nature. To me, this is like an aspect of technology or urbanization or the thought patternings behind all those, like how can we advance? Those take us away from nature. So it's ruining our relationship, or humans' relationship with the natural world. That's what this means. So I guess in terms of willpower, calling, and purpose, it would mean be careful how you advance yourself, because you could be inadvertently turning yourself into a robot. So, all right. The last two cards are Worry, the 5 of discs, and Failure, which is the 7. Now, 5 of discs is Worry. This is my imposter syndrome card, okay? Quite literally. Because this is worry for the uncontrollable things in our life. So when we're faced with things that we cannot control, like are completely out of our control, why do we worry about those things? But sometimes it's almost like inevitable that we will worry about those things. Crowley calls this card that of an earthquake, which is an uncontrollable natural disaster that could devastate many people. But it's like, there's nothing you can do about said earthquake. Now, there are steps that you can take to evacuate, to get to safety, to board up your house, right? Not board up your house. That's for a hurricane. But there are probably steps that you can take to help yourself and your safety and your family safety out. So it's like, instead of worrying, having a plan in place is better, right? And I think the fives, at this strife, at this like very pivotal time in the tarot where you're kind of like, I don't know what to do. Please tell me what I can do. Asking the universe, hey, how am I supposed to deal with this? You worry and you worry, but it's like oil and water, which is why I chose this image. There's this, that's not going to help you. Worrying isn't going to help you. No amount of worry is going to help you in this situation. So what will help you in a time of crisis? Now, I'm not telling you to go out and make bunkers, right? It's not really what I'm saying. It's that there are preparatory things that you can do to help yourself worry less, if that is an affliction that you have. And that's kind of where I would go with this, is imposter syndrome. How to not worry and just continue to be yourself. That's how you're eradicating the worry, is by being yourself. And knowing that no one else in the world is like you. So having this worry about, hey, am I going to be accepted? It doesn't matter, because you can't change who you are, kind of a thing. So, and then the last card is Failure, which is a 7 of discs. As a disc card, this is something like one of the things that I wrote in my notebook a long time ago for this card was blood money. This is blood money. And that just means money that you've gotten from ill-gotten gains, okay? And we'll see gain in the next card, but, and so it's a play on words here to me, because we're gaining something in this card, but from ill means. And then the gain that we get in the next card is from good gains. So it's recognizing the difference. But it could also, it's not in the middle as a 7, but it's the scales of this suit to me, because Crowley calls it the good in evil and the evil in good. So it's nothing. The failure here is that it's at absolute 0. And absolute 0 means that it's not going into the negative and it's not going into the positive. The failure here is that you're kind of, again, with most of the rest of the cards, there's a stagnation here, but as it's a disc, it's that you're not gaining anything and you're not losing anything in this moment of failure. And that when you're in that state of inaction, you feel like a failure. You feel like you're not gaining anything because the trajectory has stopped. But you haven't, and you're not losing, but you're not gaining. And it's when we're not gaining that we feel like we're losing. And that's not the case. That's not the case. Every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. The quote that I like to refer to with this. And, when I think of passion, but then deception, and when I think of failure, I want to say that, like imposter syndrome, we fail to be good and fail to be evil. But you just are. We're like, stop trying to be something that you're not. And that nods back to the worry card. We worry over showing our true selves and thinking we have to change certain aspects of ourselves to get accepted. And that's the worry from the other cards, the 6 and the 5, or the 5 that I just showed you. We worry and just fester over that. But it's when we're not being ourselves that we're not gaining and we're not losing anything. And so we must reevaluate and think really hard on what we show people and setting good boundaries, because we can show ourselves and be true to ourselves, true to our moral and value compass. But then at the end of the day, don't fail at being you. Because you can only fail at being you if you're not being true to yourself. Okay. So there was a little on my thoughts on some of, oh, sorry, I shook the camera. On my thoughts of some of the negative cards in the tarot, or in the Thoth tarot. Let me know your thoughts. Do you have a negative card from this deck that you wanted us to go over, like you wanted me to go over, or thought that it was going to be in the stack and it wasn't? Like, I'd love to hear from you below. So let me know what you thought of this, and in terms of willpower and like your destiny. So happy Thoth Thursday. Be sure to come back for some more Thoth love in the future.